Namaste, I'm Jason Dr. Meenakshi, Assistant Professor in Department of Shalakya Tantra, Faculty of Ayurvedic Science, Jyoti Vidyapeeth Women's University. Today we will discuss the anatomy of conjunctiva. We will discuss the first part of anatomy of conjunctiva. So, what is conjunctiva? It is a thin, transparent mucous membrane lining the posterior aspect of eyelid and the anterior aspect of eyeball. So, in the Latin, conjoin means to join. It joins the eyeball to the eyelid. It has the following parts: palpebral conjunctiva, conjunctival fornix, and bulbar conjunctiva. Palpebral conjunctiva again has the marginal conjunctiva, tarsal conjunctiva, and orbital conjunctiva, whereas the bulbar conjunctiva has the scleral and the limbal conjunctiva. In this image, they have shown the marginal conjunctiva, tarsal conjunctiva, limbal conjunctiva, bulbar conjunctiva, orbital, and fornicial conjunctiva. And the palpebral conjunctiva has three parts: marginal, tarsal, and orbital conjunctiva. What is marginal conjunctiva? It extends from the lid margin, which is the opening of the tarsal gland, where the opening of tarsal gland, from there it extends to the sulcus subtarsales. What is sulcus subtarsalis? It marks the inferior edge of the tarsal plate. The shallow groove situated 2 mm from the lid margin. The lacrimal puncta open in the marginal zone. Tarsal conjunctiva, it is firmly adherent to the tarsal plate. It is thin, transparent, and highly vascular structure. The meibomian glands appear as yellow streaks through the tarsal conjunctiva. The third part of palpebral conjunctiva is the orbital conjunctiva. It extends from the upper border of the tarsal plate to the fornix. So here completes our palpebral conjunctiva, which has the three parts: the marginal conjunctiva, tarsal conjunctiva, and the third one is the orbital conjunctiva. Then we have the bulbar conjunctiva. It has the two parts: scleral conjunctiva and the limbal conjunctiva. So scleral conjunctiva, it is a thin, transparent, and loosely attached to the underlying sclera. It permits the visualization of conjunctival and episcleral vessels. It is separated from the sclera by the episcleral vessels and the Tennant's capsule. Then what is the limbal conjunctiva? It is a 3 mm ridge around the cornea. There is the conjunctiva, Tennant's capsule, and the episcleral tissues are fused together. It is strongly adherent to the sclerocorneal junction. And what is the conjunctival fornix? It is the thin, transparent, continuous circular cul-de-sac. It is broken only on the medial side by the caruncle and the plica semilunaris. It joins the bulbar conjunctiva with the palpebral conjunctiva. Plica semilunaris. It is a crescentric fold of conjunctiva present in the medial canthus. It is a vestigial structure. It represents nictitating membrane of the lower animals. Then there is a structure called the caruncle. It is a small ovoid pinkish mass in inner canthus, medial to plica semilunaris. Modified skin with sweat, sebaceous glands, and hair follicles. It is further of four types. We are talking about the conjunctival fornix. It is of four types: superior, lateral, medial, and inferior. So here completes our anatomy of conjunctiva part 1. The next part we will discuss in the next session. So this session is powered by the digital version 2.0 Jyoti Vidyapeeth Women's University. I hope you are satisfied with my digital session. If you have any query, please mention in the comment box. I will resolve it. Thank you so much. We should include the diffuse light examination for gross lesions of the lids, conjunctiva, and cornea, including testing for sensations. Then regurgitation test and syringing to rule out lacrimal sac infection. The patient may have the chronic dacryocystitis. To rule out that particular disease of the lacrimal sac, we have to do the regurgitation test and the syringing. Then microscopic biomicroscopic examination after staining of the corneal ulcer with 2% freshly prepared aqueous solution of fluorescein dye or sterilized fluorescein impregnated filter paper strip to note the size, shape, depth, margin, floor and vascularization of the corneal ulcer. On biomicroscopy, also note the presence of keratic precipitates, which are known as a KP in short, at the back of cornea. They may be there in the anterior chamber. You have to know the depth and the contents of the anterior chamber, then the color and pattern of iris, and the condition of crystalline lens. So you have to all examine all these through the slant lamp biomicroscopic examination. Then we should go for the laboratory investigations. First, we should do the routine laboratory investigations such as hemoglobin, total leukocyte count, differential leukocyte count, erythrocyte sedimentation rate, blood sugar level, fasting and PP. Complete urine and stool examination should be carried out in each case. Then the microbiological investigations should be done. These studies are essential to identify the causative organism, confirm the diagnosis, and guide the treatment to be instituted. Materials for such investigations is obtained by scraping the base and margins of the corneal ulcer under local anesthesia using 2% xylocaine. With the help of a modified Kimura spatula or by simply using the band tip of a 20-gauge hypodermic needle. The material obtained is used for the following investigations, like gram and Gizma stain smears for possible identification of infecting organisms. Then 10% potassium hydroxide wet preparation for identification of fungal hyphae, and CFW chalcofluor white stain preparation is viewed under fluorescein microscope for fungal filaments, the walls of which appear bright apple green. Then culture on the blood agar medium for aerobic organisms, and culture on the Seborrhoeids dextrose agar medium for fungi. Then comes the treatment part. First, we should go for the treatment of the uncomplicated corneal ulcer. The bacterial corneal ulcer is a vision threatening condition and demands the urgent treatment by identification and eradication of causative bacteria. The treatment of corneal ulcer can be discussed under three headings. First is the specific treatment for the cause. Second is the non-specific supportive therapy. Third is the physical and general measures. First, the specific treatment. We should give the topical antibiotics. Initial therapy means before the results of culture and sensitivity are available, should be with combination therapy to cover the both gram-negative and gram-positive organisms. Means you will send the sample for culture and sensitivity test, but that will take 2 to 3 days. So we should not wait for the report of the culture and sensitivity and then identify that particular organism. Then antibiotic should be given. This is the ideal way to do, but but bacterial corneal ulcers should be treated as soon as possible because they can affect our vision. So we should start the initial therapy with the broad spectrum antibiotics, which cover both the gram-negative and gram-positive organisms. It is preferable to start fortified gentamicin 14 mg per ml or fortified tobramycin 14 mg per ml eye drops along with the fortified cefazolin 50 mg per ml every half to 1 hour for first few days and then reduce to 2 hourly. Once the favorable response is obtained, the fortified drops can be substituted by more diluted commercially available eye drops like ciprofloxacin eye drops or ofloxacin eye drops or getafloxacin eye drops. Then systemic antibiotics, these are usually not required. However, a cephalosporin and aminoglycoside or oral ciprofloxacin 70 milligram twice daily may be given in fulminating cases with perforation and when sclera is also involved. Then the non-specific treatment. Cycloplegic drugs. Preferably 1% atropine eye ointment or drops should be used to reduce the pain from ciliary spasm and to prevent the formation of posterior synecdoche from secondary iridocyclitis. Atropine also increases the blood supply to anterior uvea by relieving the pressure on the anterior ciliary arteries and so brings the more antibodies in the aqueous humor. It also reduces exudation by decreasing hyperemia and vascular permeability. Other cycloplegics other than the atropine, which can be used in 2%, are homatropine eye drops. Then next is the systemic analgesics and anti-inflammatory drugs such as paracetamol and ibuprofen relieve the pain and decrease edema. Then vitamins, vitamin A, vitamin B complex and vitamin C, they all help in the early healing of ulcer. And then next is the physical and general measures. Hot fermentation. The local application of heat, preferably the dry heat, it gives the comfort, reduces pain and causes the vasodilatation. Then dark goggles may be used to prevent photophobia and rest, good diet and fresh air may have a soothing effect on the patient. Then next is the treatment of the non-healing corneal ulcer. If the ulcer progresses despite the above therapy, the following additional measures should be taken. First, the removal of any cause of non-healing ulcer. A thorough search for any already missed cause not allowing the healing should be made, and when found, such factors should be eliminated. The common causes of non-healing ulcers are as under local causes, the associated raised intraocular pressure, concretions, misdirected cilia, impacted foreign body, dacryocystitis, inadequate therapy, wrong diagnosis, lag of ophthalmos, and excessive vascularization of ulcer. Systemic causes, the diabetes mellitus, severe anemia, malnutrition, chronic debilitating diseases, and patients on systemic steroids. These are all causes should be eradicated. Then mechanical debridement of ulcer to remove the necrosed material by scraping the floor of the ulcer with a spatula under local anesthesia may hasten the healing. Then cauterization of the ulcer may also be considered in non-responding cases. The cauterization may be performed with pure carbolic acid or 10 to 20% trichloroacetic acid. Then bandage soft contact lens may also help in healing. Then periotomy. The severing of perilimbal conjunctival vessels may be performed when excessive corneal vascularization is hindering the healing. Then next is the treatment of impending perforation. When ulcer progresses and perforation seems imminent, the following additional measures may help to prevent perforation and its complications. First is no strain. The patient should be advised to avoid sneezing, coughing, and straining during stool. He should be advised the strict bed rest. Pressure bandage should be applied to give some external support. Lowering of intraocular pressure by simultaneous use of acetazolamide, intravenous mannitol, and oral glycerol, timolol eye drops, and even paracentesis with slow evaluation of aqueous from the anterior chamber may be performed. Then tissue adhesive glue can be used. Conjunctival flap gives support to the weak tissue. Bandage, soft contact lens, penetrating therapeutic keratoplasty should be done. Then last is the treatment of perforated corneal ulcer. The best is to prevent perforation. However, if perforation has occurred, immediate measures should be taken to restore the integrity of perforated cornea. Depending upon the size of perforation and availability, measures like use of tissue adhesive glues, covering with conjunctival flap, use of bandage soft contact lens or therapeutic keratoplasty should be undertaken. Best is an urgent therapeutic keratoplasty. So our session completes here. Thank you so much. This session is powered by digital version 2.0, Jyoti Vidyapeeth Women's University. I hope you are satisfied with my digital session. If you have any query, please mention in the comment box. I will resolve it.